All right. Hey, want to welcome everyone to You and the Law podcast show. This is our first time on this uh, platform. So we have been on for what, a year and a half. My
Yeah.
co host is, so I guess we need to introduce ourselves first. So I'm going to let you go first since you are, the host of the show.
Yeah. So what's going on, V man? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great.
My name is Keith Humphrey. I've been in law enforcement for 34 years, and I have the esteemed pleasure of being the chief of police for the city of Little Rock. I'm really enjoying this. Virgil and I have been friends for a long time, and we just decided that it's time to have a real talk podcast dealing with law enforcement, especially when it comes to concerns from the African American community, other communities of color. So we keep it real here. We keep it real. We don't sugarcoat. When something's right, it's right. If something's wrong, it's wrong. If something's questionable, we'll talk about it. And I think that's what's make our show very popular because we are honest, and just because we're police, we're not always right. We get it wrong. And so I think that's one of the things too that citizens want to know.
Yeah.
Coming from police, we don't try to justify everything that happens, but at the same time, um, we explain and break down things. We don't try to armchair quarterback. We will make that very clear because unless you're there in that person's mind, you don't know what they're thinking. But we can definitely talk about the actions. So
Exactly.
that's all about me, and I'll turn it over to my esteemed. I'm gonna let you be the host, man.
You,
I always give you a hard time saying I'm the host, but I'm gonna allow you to be the host, man. So I turn it over to our esteemed host, Virgil Pierre Bartholomew Solomon Green.
well, hey, well, again, Keith, it looks like we've got some people who have joined us, and hopefully, if you want to share some comments as the podcast show go along, please do so in the chat, and we can definitely get to those messages. But just a little bit about our show. We launched this show back at the beginning of the pandemic, and so we wanted to have a platform to where we can talk with our listeners about issues that's going on in the policing industry with that involves the minority community. And so we launched that on another platform, and we were there for a little over a year and a half, and we decided to branch out and try to do something different with our podcast to hopefully where we will reach a much larger audience to kind of give us a little bit more control over our podcast. And so, as Chief Humphrey said, that we are, it's a law enforcement podcast show, but we talk about a lot of different topics. And so we're hopefully hoping that everybody will like our show. You can go to our Facebook page. We're on Facebook at You and the Law One. We're also on Twitter. That's at You and the Law One on Twitter. And so definitely share your comments about what we about anything that we're talking about. And Keith, tonight we're I see we've got Sarah Banner is has joined us. Keith, our good friend Sarah is on, so that's
What's up,
great.
Sarah? What's up, Miss Sarah? How you doing?
Yeah, so I'll type her a message, but we're gonna, we may be a little rusty with this in the beginning, but I think as the weeks go along,
I'm
we'll
not gonna be
def
rusty, man. Speak
you're
for
not gonna
yourself.
be rusty. Yeah.
I use lotion, man. In your case, you need to use shortening or lard.
well, well, you know what? We're gonna get it together, and but it's just great that everybody, those who can tune in, who have been faithful followers of You and the Law podcast show, and because we were on the Bachelor News Radio Network, so and now we're streaming live, and we're using a platform called Restream, and so. I think we're going to be very pleased with this, and hopefully, everybody who tunes in and listens to the other rebroadcast shows will be pleased as well. And I also want to remind you that if you have missed any of our other previous shows, you can go to Anchor, you can go to Spotify, you can go to Google Podcasts. We're on all of those platforms, so you can listen to all of our shows. But Keith, we wanted to end the year off talking about a year in review of 2021 and everything that happens this past year, which has been a lot. And so, we've had about 48 episodes this year. And so, we want to end the year talking about the things that have occurred in 2021 and how that changed law enforcement.
Well, yeah, there were a lot of things. We saw the January 6th incident, insurrection that involved law enforcement. It also involved on both sides law enforcement that were on the receiving end of assaults, and then some in law enforcement that were involved in some of those assaults. We saw people try to defend that. People in our own profession try to defend what they saw on January the 6th. The family of Derek Chauvin, George Floyd's family, although they'll never have George back. I will tell you that I believe that them sitting in that courtroom and hearing the guilty verdict, I think that sent a sense of closure, not complete closure, but we saw that. We saw a lot of violence in the nation. Gun crimes were up, violent crimes up, youth crimes were up, and so we did talk, but we had a lot of positive things to talk about: social workers and law enforcement, community programs. How do we help our unsheltered community and our communities that suffer from mental illness? And so, we are. I think we do a lot of good things, and this year has been really busy for us. But we keep it real. We keep it real. So I will tell you, Virgil, January 6th was an embarrassment, especially for law enforcement, to just think that we are hired to protect individuals, and we had individuals who were actually turning on law enforcement. And the nation stepped up and basically said, even if we don't like police, how can police officers turn on each other and assault? Some of the most vicious attacks that we've ever seen against law enforcement, especially from our own so-called brothers and sisters in blue. I think that raised a lot of people's eyes. You always hear me talk about we take 50 steps forward and we get knocked back 20 miles.
Yeah.
I think they did that. And so I think we can recover from it, but it's going to take some honest discussions and some soul searching to realize how did we get to that point? How did we get to the point that we're attacking our own, and that we want to go in and actually, how do we come as a country? We want to go in and attack our own, and then we want to destroy the Senate, the House, the actual location that makes the laws that we live by, and individuals that have been elected to set those laws. We want to attack them. I mean, people were ready. People came there prepared to be violent, and that's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Keith, we got one of our listeners, Mrs. Baker. She made the comment about we had some law enforcement officials here from Oklahoma who went and got caught up in that everything that took place on January the 6th. And so, everybody has the freedom to do what they want to do. But I think, when it comes to things that involves law enforcement, you kind of have to step back, because especially when you're in the leadership, whether you're a sheriff or whether you're a police chief, and you put yourself in that environment, it doesn't look good. And I think there's a lot of people who concerns about what took place with individuals who participated in that insurrection, who were law enforcement, who attack law enforcement. And even if they were there and they saw the people attacking law enforcement, they didn't do a whole lot to really step in to protect those officers who were being assaulted.
Well, I think the thing that really concerns a lot of the nation was that there were excuses being made and I will tell you that I believe there were police chiefs in the nation that did not want to know if their people were there. We have a very good friend that works in the city, um, in one of the cities in Oklahoma, and I won't call out. And he basically called officers out that he knew were there, and
Yeah.
said, your actions don't reflect on the oaths that we took and the
Hmm.
and the badge that you wear. And the tables were turned, and he was called a racist for even bringing that up. And so we were even attacked for even um, discussing um, our disappointment and for what happened, and chiefs were attacked, executive command staff was attacked, and stuff, and so that's scary that people believe that was okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and Ms. Baker, she made a comment about, it's real accountability. And that's what this is about. It's, everybody should be held accountable, especially when you're in a leadership position, whether, like I said, whether you're a sheriff or a police chief. Um, and, Keith, I want to kind of go back, how, we started to show off in January with where we had on several guests, Jess Eddy and another attorney who was heavily involved in the Justice for Julius Jones. And so that was our first show of the year, where it was the Walk for Freedom that had taken place with Jess Eddy and a lot of other people across the Oklahoma who went on like 135-mile walk from Oklahoma City to McAllister, Oklahoma. And it was real interesting to have um, Jess on and the other guests talk about the everything that surrounded Julius Jones, what took place, and um, and as we know now, the governor of Oklahoma has uh, uh, granted clemency to Julius Jones, and so a lot of people were very instrumental in their voices. And Sarah Banner, she was a part of that group. Miss Baker, she was a part of that group, and so many others. And so that was just one of the shows that started our 2021 podcast show off when we were talking about the Walk for Freedom that involved Julius Jones. And Keith, and I'll say this, on one of our platforms on Anchor, that show has been listened to almost 30 times. So people were real interested in everything that involved Julius Jones.
First, I'm going to say this. I think with tragedy comes some form of light. And I think that just the things that we've seen over the last in the criminal justice system over the last 5 to 6 years, you've seen more people involved in these type of in these type of involved in these type of incidents or scenarios where you have individuals that may have been wrongfully convicted. Don't know. I don't know a lot about that story, just what I've read, or people who uh, have been put to death, and we find out later they hadn't. But you're starting to see more and more people get involved and calling for justice for
Hmm.
individuals who may not have received the appropriate justice. And so I think with the deaths of going back to Trayvon Martin and going back to Sandra Bland and Mr. Castile and Mr. Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others, the other young man where the officer was just convicted, the other young man in Wisconsin. Um, I think that what we're seeing is we're seeing people stand up and say, "Hey, no, not anymore. We need to work. We need to see more showing that people are getting uh, treated the way that they should, and that no matter what a person has on a piece of paper that is their criminal record, they still deserve to be treated fairly. And we don't have the right in law enforcement to be judge and jury. We do our job. We can't take it personally if someone is not convicted or arrested. We can't take that. Our job is to preserve the peace, and we got to do it right. We can't cut corners, and we definitely can't take someone's life just because we wear a badge. And I think that's what people are holding us accountable for and saying, "Hey, no more."
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, Keith, I want to recognize another one of our faithful listeners. I don't know if you can see that some Arkansas people have joined the podcast show. HC and Taisha Swift have joined us. So thank you guys for joining us. And for some reason, I want to let everybody know who's listening to the show. Um, we got to work this out to where we can be able to reply to your comments. So if we can't reply to your comments directly, I'll definitely read your comments and recognize that you're on the podcast show. And so uh, she says that this is much better. And so I think a lot of people are now able to kind of see what you look like and what I look like. And, because, you
Well,
think you've got this.
my voice kind of tells people what I should look like. I'm sure people realize that they're not surprised at what you look like. So I just want to put that in there.
well, and for those who are just now coming on to the show, and hopefully more people will join us. This is You and the Law podcast show. We've been on another network for going almost 2 years, and so now we decided to venture out and do some things on our own that hopefully will continue to grow our podcast show. Because we've had, Keith, we've had listeners from all over the country listen to the show, and so we've had a really good following, and hopefully that following will continue because of the topics that we talk about. And so I think this will be a much better platform to where we can connect with our listeners in person, and they can connect with us as well. So, I want to jump into, we talked about, we had on just Eddie and another guest who were very instrumental in the Freedom Walk for Julius Jones, and Keith, you mentioned something about not knowing a lot about his case. And we've talked on our podcast show, we've talked about people who have been wrongfully convicted, who have sit in prison for over, 20 years, 30 years. And one of those, Keith, if you remember, we talked about a guy who was in an Alabama prison who had his character was portrayed in the movie uh, Just Mercy. And so he had spent almost 30 years in prison, and he was able to get out of prison for a crime he did not commit. And so there are so many people who, especially in Keith, I think in law enforcement industry, people have this attitude that, hey, if a jury convicted you, then you're actually guilty of that crime. Well, it's sad to say when the justice system is supposed to be fair and equal, but you've got people who are wrongfully convicted, and but you got people in the law enforcement community who feels that they are guilty, and so it's real sad to know that a man spent 30 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, and that 30 years of his life will never be. How do you give somebody 30 years of their life back?
How do you know that's how do you know in your heart that you didn't do anything, but there's nothing you can do about it, and then you are behind bars for 30 years, so much you miss. How do you not come out angry? I think I told you
Yeah.
the story about the young man. I was at a event I was speaking, and he was one of the uh, young men that Craig Watkins, who was the first black district attorney in the city of Dallas, actually decided to open a number of cases that there was some questionable behavior by the police department, and at that time, the prosecutor, and I believe there were 18 of those cases that were overturned. Uh, all of them, 95% of them were African American. There's this one young man that was at the event. He was speaking, and when he spoke, he had been he did 18 years in the penitentiary,
Hmm.
18 years. And the only thing I could say to this young man when he finished was, "I'm sorry, brother. On behalf of law enforcement, I'm sorry. That's not the law enforcement profession that I became involved in, that I love." That's all you could do is apologize. You couldn't, there's nothing more you can do but apologize when somebody's has gone through that, and you listen to their story. And that's what I did. I sit there and attentively listen to the story. It was just very sad, but that's just one of the many stories we hear about on a daily basis regarding it. How many people are in prisons or in jail or on monitors or on paper that haven't done anything. And
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
people really don't understand that a plea bargain is a conviction.
Yeah,
People, I'll plead out. Well, that's a conviction.
yeah, it's on your record.
It's on your record. And so, how many people that have taken plea bargains thinking that it's the lesser of the two evils, but it's still a conviction on them, and it prohibits them from doing some of the things that you and I can do, or other people who are listening can do. In some
Yeah,
states, vote. You can't vote, and you can't get a driver's license, depending on the state and stuff. So once you're released, you're being um, penalized again. So it's just sad.
yeah. Well, Keith, I want to recognize one of my somebody from my home state of New Mexico on here, Sonia Thompson. She lives out in San Diego, California, but she's a home girl from Hobbs, New Mexico. So, Sonia, glad that you're able to tune in and join us. And she says it's love to see our black leaders um, coming out, and she says we need to see more come on board. And so, hopefully, through this platform, Keith, that we have. More people will engage the black community and the minority communities, especially when we need to be a part of the conversation more than what we have been. And I think a lot of people are that's why people listen to what we have to say because we're going to keep it real. We're going to be honest about it. If it's not right, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about the good and the bad. And so, hopefully, people will respect that and definitely follow our podcast show and become a part of the conversation. Um, and so you're saying HC is saying that the hit like the share button to notify people. And Keith, as I go along, and I'm the one that's kind of running everything here, and so I I've got to figure that out. And so HC, I'm working on it, and so I may be a
A lot of
little
people having a hard time getting because you're running stuff.
yeah.
You're running. Hey, hey, Bird. Jason Starr. Jason said he had a question for us both, and absolutely, Jason. Please type in your message.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you for
and
joining.
Jason is one of the former officers with the Tulsa campus police department. So Jason, glad that you're tuning in to You and the Law podcast show as we are. This is our first night streaming on Restream. Um, Typically, I want to let everybody know our show has been broadcasted live on Tuesdays, and we are going to continue that. The show was broadcasted live every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're going to be broadcasting live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 Eastern Standard Time. So um, for those of you who have followed us, I know we're on tonight. It's a Thursday night, but we wanted to end the year off with letting everybody know what's going on with you in the law and how you can follow. And so, and as Jason, you know, gets his message to us, I'm gonna read another message where Miss Baker, she says that the to the fact that we are originally deemed guilty simply because of the color of our skin. You can't change the system; it's still built on the foundation of race and oppression. Then she say we become comfortable with asking for forgiveness instead of seeking truth before judgment. Uh, and you're right, Ms. Baker. I mean, got a system that is supposed to be fair and equal. Seen so many times has not been fair and equal, especially in the minority community. And so, and that, and again, Keith, I think the importance of a podcast show like here is to engage with people and talk with them about the things that they're concerned about, because we've talked about everything from George Floyd to have occurred, and so everything that has happened, we have talked about it, and as you know, these that have happened that by we're going to get ready for a show. The topic that we have chosen about oftentimes, we have something else to talk about. But Jason says, as a white police officer, what are things I do to help the gap with and building a relationship with minorities without trying too hard to fit in or to do much relationship? It's a good question, and I'll let Chief Humphrey.
Yeah, Jason, thank you for that question. It took a lot of it took a strong person to ask that question. The bottom line is thank you for asking. Thank you for wanting to know. But one of the things I will say, just be you. Don't try too hard. Listen. Make every moment a learning moment and a teaching moment. You can learn from individuals and you can also teach individuals. I think what happens when you try too hard and you try too hard to fit in, but people want to know that you care and they want to know that they can trust you. And they don't want to hear, well, I know what you're going through. I know what you've been through. They want to hear sincerity. Just listen. Sometimes just get out of the car, the police car, and just listen to individuals and hear what they have to say. And don't take it personally. We as police officers have it really bad taking it personally. We want to be on the defensive, and sometimes just listening, being calm, and just listening. And maybe that first encounter, maybe that person doesn't know you. Maybe that's why they're not being as nice as you think. But you have to build that trust, and especially with communities of color, and especially with law enforcement. Even as an African American police officer, I still have to build the trust with African Americans, Hispanics, with all people in the community, because just what's happening with our profession right now, the uniform that I wear, is some people just don't trust us. And so you have to build that trust. It's not going to happen overnight. And once I will tell you, Tommy Norman, people ask me about Tommy Norman all the time. He's in a neighboring city. Tommy cares. Tommy gets out of the police car. What you see Tommy doing is not just for show. Tommy's out there really in the minority community, and he's listening. He didn't try overnight to fit in. He had to earn the trust, gain the trust, not buy the trust, but gain the trust, and letting people know, hey, I'm going to be back again. This is not just a photo shoot. I really care about you. So those are the things that you do. Just be you and be honest.
Yeah.
Open and listen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, HC is wondering who is AC. So for her to say is AC, knows who she is. We just we just kind of short down HC. So I could say Helena, but I don't want to mess up your name. Type and say it's not the way you pronounce my name. So on, you are H. Humphrey,
It's
gave you that name.
Alenia Condi Valencino.
Man,
That's
that
what it
that
is. We call it
the
HC.
yeah, so we're just gonna stick to HC, okay? Is that cool? She also says her comment to Jason, she just says, I would say build trust with communications, which as you know, Keith, communication is a lot uh, uh, that involves everything we do. So uh, it starts with communication. So, and I have to say this for Jason is a really good officer. Um, he definitely engages with the students with the Tulsa Public School District, and I believe he's still with the Tulsa Public Schools. Jason, if you're not, let me know. But he was an officer there when I was the deputy chief major with the Tulsa Public Schools. So, really good officer who really cares about the students and cares about connecting with the black students. So Jason says, "I love Tommy. He's definitely an inspiration and role model." He said, "I look up to." And thank you guys both. I will definitely be watching more. This is awesome. Major Green say you greatly missed by a lot of us here at TPS. So Jason, thank you for tuning in. If you can't watch the entirety of the show, we thank you for joining. Let everybody else know about you and the law that show, and can in and join us live every Tuesday. And so as well.
Hey, can I ask you a question, Virgil?
Yeah,
Just something. Have you ever been in a foot chase?
yeah,
Really?
yeah. What are you trying to say?
Well, I'm just going to say this: for the people out here who are watching, who do you think would be more successful in a foot chase?
You or
Chief
me?
Humphrey or Chief Green? And
Yeah.
I guarantee you, it's going to be me.
So anybody who just heard that, Chief wants to know between me and him who would do better in the foot chase, and I'm pretty sure HC or Thais, one of them is going to reply. And somebody has replied. She says, neither one of y'all. Well, hey, so the answer, not me or you. And so
Okay,
Jason,
that's her. That's her. She has a right to her opinion.
yeah. Miss Baker says, Jason, people can tell when a person is genuine and sincere. Lead with empathy and understand that those in the community are traumatized, and it takes a lot. So, you know, some good some good advice from Ms. Baker to Jason. I think the biggest thing, as she stated, that people will they know when you're sincere, and if you're not sincere about what you're doing, it's going to show up at some point. And
Virgil,
this
you know
isn't
what?
just yeah
You know what, man? There's no canned approach to building trust in the community. It's just basically being yourself and showing empathy. Um, Ms. Baker said it. You know, you got to lead with empathy and understanding, and people can feel your sincerity. And I can't. You know, you can't. This is a job. You get into this job to help people,
yeah
and people need to feel that. And we need to stop as law enforcement officers believing that if we do show empathy and show that we care, that's a sign of weakness. We don't always have to have that stoic face. We don't always have to smile. However, we do have the responsibility and an obligation to treat everyone with respect and to react to the actions of those individuals. And 90% of the community of the community that you're working in wants to see you there, respect you. They want that outpour of caring. They want to display that outpour of caring. They want to receive that. So we, as law enforcement, we have to, and I've said it, all the training is there, Virgil, and
yeah
to the listeners. I think we have the best training available than I've seen in my 34 years in law enforcement. I'll say this again. We have the best training available. The training on emotional intelligence, de-escalation, the training on crisis intervention, um, all of that stuff. All of that stuff is available. But how are we getting it to our officers? And if we are getting it to our officers, how are they absorbing that? And if they're absorbing it, are they using that? Or are we just sitting in a classroom saying, checking the box, and we go back out and we're doing the same thing? So
Yeah.
the resources are there. They're there. They're available. And a lot of them it's not about money. I mean, there are so many different organizations that will come in and host these type of trainings. You can even send your officers to a train the trainer class to bring that stuff back, but it's got to be in your heart and it's got to be a desire to do that.
Yeah. Well, recognize another Arkansas person has joined us, Mr. Tony Hollis. Thank you for tuning in. I met him when I was had been selected for the Chief Osceola, Arkansas a couple of months ago, and so glad you can be able to do this, Tony. It's good seeing you on, and he has his own live. I cannot name of it, but it's a very informative. He's up around Osceola and Blytheville, Arkansas. So, Tony, glad to join us. Jason, well, let me get to Ms. Baker. He said, yes, we need officers. We need good ones. And I think the biggest thing, one of the things that we talked about on our podcast show is the fact that we need officers who really care about not there just to arrest people. And that goes away with building that trust with that community, and it goes a long way in the gap and something about Keith. Jay says, I have a very strong relationship to respect and trust. Keep me at I respect them for that. Forward to speaking with them every day and talking to them. They start to open up. He says, I know it wasn't overnight, so forward to to the chase, to the show that I about them and in and out of school. School is a real important key in the law enforcement. You got school resource officers there in Little Rock, had them in Norman. School resource officers really build a lot of good relationships with students.
They do, man. And I will tell you, there's been a lot of situations that have been interrupted just by the fact that our school resource officers know their kids and the kids trust them. I've asked my SROs to set a goal every day of trying to meet, as many new kids as they had every day. Say hi to everybody comes into school and try to get to know kids so you build that relationship and that trust. But that's an important. Kids are our future, man, and trust me. In our violent crimes that we're seeing throughout the nation, the suspects are getting older. Younger and younger. And we're looking at a deal that happened the other day in Mesquite and Garland, Texas, where you had a 14-year-old who was driven to a location by his dad to keep some other people. I mean, the dad drove his son there. And so how do these kids have how do you have a chance when your parent drives you to the scene, know what you're going to do, and drives you to that scene to carry out such a heinous act? And so a lot of these kids don't have anyone to look up to. And so as police officers, school resource officers, principals, teachers, we have an obligation to be there for those kids and be those mentors this conversation has come up quite a bit in the past. If you remember, there were athletes that say they didn't ask to be role models, and I get that. But I will tell you, as police officers and teachers and uh, individuals in those occupations, we are role models. We are mentors, whether we
Yeah.
realize it or not. And role models can be negative and they can be positive. So everybody has the potential of being a role model or mentor. It just depends. One way goes negative, one way goes positive. So I think I want that's one of the things I like, because everybody talks about, oh, you got a role model is a good person. No, not necessarily. A role model, people learn from everybody. You have some people that want to go in the direction of the people who want to do completely wrong all the time, and some people want to do. And you have those kids that are in the middle, and so
Yeah.
those are the kids that can go either way. Those are the ones that you want to steer in the right way. But um, there's always a kid watching to see, listening what you're doing.
Yeah. Exactly. And, Tony just texted me and said that his his show is the Tony Hollis Live Talk Show is Testify, and so he definitely gets engaged in his community. He's out there talking about things to be talked about, whether it's in Osceola or Black or any that part of Arkansas. So really good guy, and I'm glad I met him. And so everybody, we meet people, become good friends with them, and so we want to encourage everybody who is tuning in to You and the Law podcast show that this is our new place where we're going to be every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let your friends and family know and tune in. Whether we have, you know, 10 people listening or 200 people listening, but our goal is to just share information with our listeners and about what's going on in policing. And some of Keith, I want to kind of run down some of the things that we've talked about in 2020 and 2021 that we haven't stayed away from. And again, I think that's why people have followed the show and continue to follow the show, where we talked about, racism in law enforcement, white supremacy in law enforcement. And Keith, those are things that people in our industry don't like for people to talk about. And so when you start talking about bringing up the fact that there is white supremacy in law enforcement, um, a lot of doors are closed to you.
I think what we have to realize is that there's discrimination, racism, and hate in every organization. Because someone has on a badge doesn't make them above any of that. That's scary, because these are some of the same individuals that we're asking to protect
Hmm.
us, protect our interests. But it's reality is reality. I mean, when you've done this job as long as we've done, we've seen and we've heard some things that you never would have thought. I mean,
Yeah.
who would have thought January the 6th would have occurred, and watching police officers attack other police officers, disrespecting other police officers, calling other police officers the N word, um, you know, basically saying, hey, I'm a police officer, let me in, you should be joining us. Never thought that would have occurred. Never thought I would have seen that. I know that there are people that have that mentality, but to actually openly say it, but at the same time, it lets you know that this stuff exists. I mean, these type of feelings, these type of behavior, mentality exist, and
Yeah.
so it opens the eyes of a bunch of police chiefs. I've talked to police chiefs throughout the nation, and it caused them to open their eyes and be more vigilant on what's actually going on in their police department.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, and Keith, one of some of the other topics that we talked about this past year, we talked with our good friend, Chief James Smith, who's the police chief in Lawton, Oklahoma, where we talked about, the long, uh, the history of policing, the brutality of policing. So we had Chief Smith on where we talked about just the culture of policing, how policing has changed some, but in 2021, we saw the incident with George Floyd. We saw so many other uh, incidents involving police brutality. We saw incidents that took place here in Oklahoma City that led to a lot of protesting, and so the policing has a long way to really connect with the community, and so those, that's one of the topics that we talked about. We talked about mental health illness, how police respond to individuals with mental health uh, illness and what crises that they're dealing with. In one of the shows, Keith, I won't forget, we had on uh, D. Janae Jackson. She a uh, video that went viral after she was pulled over. And for those who don't know anything about D. Janae Jackson, she is a federal custom officer in Birmingham, and she was on her way to work. A local a sheriff department, and the way she was treated, she was in uniform. She was a black lady, but went with her Facebook Live video and attention across the country and even outside of the United States. And on as a guest, and she talked about her experience and a black woman in policing, Keith.
And very interesting show. I think we got a lot of good reviews on that show. And let's just face it, man, because we're in the professions that we are in, it doesn't mean that we're not affected by what's going on in the nation and what happens daily in every community. And it was, uh, I thought it took a lot of courage for her to step up and talk about that and do some of the things that she's doing. And but it kind of makes you kind of wonder, man. You can't take things for granted, and in this day and time, there's no way we can say, "Oh no, that's not going to happen to us," or "That's not happening." I learned a long time ago, and you can't do that in this profession. Don't let anything that occurs, it'll disappoint you, but you can't let it surprise you because, and we're human. At the end of the day, every law enforcement officer is human. Every law enforcement officer breathes. Every enforcement officer, uh, uh, has the five senses, and so human make mistakes. But the thing about it is, there are those times we cannot afford to make mistakes. We cannot afford to allow our own bias to take over the decisions that we make. Some do not get it.
Yeah.
Some do not get it. I remember, Virgil, interviewing a young man when I used to sit on the interview panels in Arlington. And this was a young kid that was very privileged. And the only reason he wanted to be a police officer is because, and he said this during the interview panel, that he had some people that said that had harassed him when he was a kid, and he actually wanted to go back to his class reunion, and he wanted to have his gun and badge clipped on his belt, and basically show these people, hey, who you're messing with. And this is somebody who said that, which I'm glad he did say that,
Mhm.
because his true feelings came out. But to say that, and just think about if you don't have a well formatted interview process or hiring process, just think how many individuals like that get through. Uh,
Yeah.
and and then now you're teaching them the trade uh, of 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 being a police officer, in which there are times when you take someone's freedom, um, and now people take advantage of that. You have people that officers that will figure out ways how to do it and not get caught. But this young man um, had the courage to. Well, I don't know if it was the courage or he didn't realize what he was saying, but he said it. He was thinking and it came out, and I'm proud to say he didn't get hired.
Yeah. Well, Keith, Jason made a good comment where he says it's that blue wall of silence. More officers have to start speaking out and holding one another accountable. And Ms. Baker, she said exactly, Jason. A person's silence is still violence. And so, I think everybody has their own comfort zone, but I believe more people need to speak out, and when they do see people being where their rights are being violated and they're being abused by another police officer. Um, Again, this is a great profession that you and I have been a part of for decades, and it's a profession that when you go back, Keith, and you look at what took place in during the civil rights era in the 60s and 70s. Um, i- a lot of people ask this question: how much has law enforcement really changed? Because you're seeing police officers still um, violate people's civil rights. You're seeing police officers who, uh, to some degree, this past election cycle, uh, even to some level, there was some intimidation with people going to vote, and so it took you back to what things looked like back in during the civil rights era with Martin Luther King, and just how bad law enforcement um, got involved with attacking people, and all of these people wanted to do was the right to go and vote, Keith, and so a lot of people continue to ask this question about policing, and that's why one of the unpopular things that was talked about this year, Keith, was uh, the defund the police. And you and I were totally against defunding the police, but you've got some people who are advocates in their communities, and they feel that the police should be defunded. But I think when you do that, you're definitely impacting a community that is really wanting a lot of good police services, but when you start defunding the police, those are things that could have a negative impact on the community.
Well, I think people sometimes I think they have the two phrases confused: um, defund the police or reform. Defund and reform. Some people think it's the same thing. It's not. Reform is
Yeah,
about changes, changes to your policies, changes to behavior, changes to uniforms, changes to if you're not as active in the community. It's all about reforming. How do you reform to become more inclusive? How do you reform to become more caring in the organization in the community? Defunding means we don't want police department. We think that money can go to other entities. I'm a firm believer in reform. I do believe there's funding within the police department that can be utilized to address some of the problems, community programs, things like that, units that can be set up, civilianized in certain areas that can address a lot of the community's needs and things like that. Social workers. So I think people get those confused sometimes. They mean reform, but they say defund.
yeah, exactly. So Ms. Baker, she says it's more than just defunding the police. There is wasteful money being spent in police departments when it should go into better training and organizations. And you're absolutely right, Ms. Baker. I mean, they are the dollars that the city allocates for police budgets. Uh, if some of those dollars can go into better training, and that can be spent for other community services, you have to look at that. But at the same time, you definitely want to make sure that you've got enough police officers who are uh, providing that service to the community that the community is desperately needing. So, um, Keith, we're getting a lot of good comments about the things that we've talked about, and but I want to go back to we've talked about I said earlier that we were going to be doing our podcast show on on Tuesdays, and so uh, uh, my co-host is suggested that we do the podcast show on another night, and so uh, it looks like we're going to be changing our show from Tuesday to Thursday. Is Thursday going to be okay with you, uh, uh, Mr. Host of the You and the Law podcast show?
I'll have my people get back with yours.
Your people are going to get back with me. Okay. But we got to let our people know. Our people want to know what's going on with you and the law. So, but the good thing about this here is that we're connected with Facebook Live, and so people can go back and they can watch this here, and they can uh, uh, share their comments about what we've talked about. So, Ms. Baker, I want to tell you, you have been on here from the beginning, and I definitely thank you for being so you know, active with us. And she says because uh, Jason says I have to go, gentlemen, but thank you. And I will definitely be checking in for the next show. So, Jason, we thank you for tuning in to You and the Law podcast show on Restream. So, Ms. Baker, she says, because we would have citizens who are contributing to society economically, it's a process to get there. But it looks it took us a long time. It took us a long journey to get to this place. We have to start somewhere. So you're absolutely right. Keith, we're coming up on the last few minutes of the podcast show, and we definitely want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. Um, HC, man, she finally woke up. She says, I think citizens need to know that police officers see so many monstrosities and have to go on with with their daily lives. They need mental help as well. And we've talked about that, Keith, about officers, their mental wellness and safety. And so officers need to understand how they can process those things where they don't bring those things to work with them.
Absolutely. That's why the 21st Century Policing Initiative focused on one of the 6 pillars focused on officer wellness. And it's not the
Uh-huh.
physical part, it's the emotional part of it. And we have a full-time wellness program that I would put up against any wellness program in the nation. And so we continue to learn how to grow um, grow that program. But we have to start taking better care of ourselves
Yeah.
physically, emotionally, spiritually as police officers.
Yeah. Well, Keith, I want to get to some of the comments. I want to. I got my cousin who is out in Amarillo, Texas. He is a chaplain. He says he's definitely going to share this. So thank you for tuning in and listening to You and the Law podcast show. Tony says police liability insurance is the one proposal that will change the behavior of bad cops. What do you think, Keith?
That question's come up quite a bit, and I think that could be the case. I mean, you start having to pay out of your own pocket for the things that you're doing that are not within policy or not within state law that may get attention. I mean,
Yeah,
the you have so many people fighting against those type of laws. Um, but I will tell you, sometimes it takes that. That's a reality check for individuals to realize I can't just go out here and do things and then fall behind the umbrella of, um, you know, immunity. And so uh, that could be on the horizon. I know legislators have been talking about that, and but we'll see.
yeah,
We'll see.
yeah. Yeah, good comment. Well, Keith, we're coming up on probably the last minute. We our show is always run about an hour, and so we want to kind of stick to that format. But again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the show, and definitely, share this, and hopefully we will continue to get more listeners. And by the way, since I'm the co-host of the show and Chief Humphrey is the host of the show. I'm running everything, so there's some things that I've got to learn with this new um, platform that we're on. So it's going to get better as we go, and but we want to definitely thank everybody for tuning in. And Ms. Baker made a comment about the FOP, and it's something that we've also talked about on the podcast show. So, Keith, man, it's been a great beginning to our show, and man, I want to let everybody know to make sure that you tune in. So we're going to be on. We're going to be on Thursdays. Is that what you want to go with, brother?
That is fine. Wednesday or Thursday. I think that would be good. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
I
Well,
think
well,
that.
I'll tell. Okay. Well, I'll tell everybody. So um, I've misspoken. So we're going to be doing our live podcast shows on Thursday afternoons at 6 p.m. because Chief Humphrey has
Wait a minute,
other.
man. Wait a minute.
What?
Thursday at 6 p.m. is not the afternoon. It's the
Well,
evening hours. You said
okay,
afternoon, man. Is it afternoon in Hobbs, New Mexico?
man. You
Is
know
that what
what?
that means? Is that what that means?
Hey, I gotta let people know. For some reason, my buddy here, my co-host, Hobbs in Mexico is known worldwide. We are the basketball capital of the world when it comes to high school basketball. In our high school, the Hobbs Eagles just won their holiday tournament, so kudos to the Hobbs Eagles winning their holiday basketball
Wait a
tournament.
minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, Virgil Earl. Wait a minute. Did you just say Hobbs, New Mexico is the basketball capital of the
Capital of the
nation?
world. Yes, we
World?
are. Yes, high
Okay.
school basketball.
High school basketball and high school football is king in Texas.
Well, for everybody, my co-host, he's from Texas, and I'm from
Dallas,
Hobbs, New
West
Mexico.
Dallas,
He's from South Oak Cliff.
West Dallas, and then move to South Oak Cliff. So you're gonna say it, get it right.
Well, hey, Key, we wanna let everybody know, and we like, and for everybody who's still on here, we like to have fun with each other, and we hopefully that you will in tune in and join in with the serious conversation, but we also like to have fun, yeah, with our audience, and so. HC says this will open up some many lawsuits and ambulance chasers. Um, uh, and then Miss Baker, she says progress, not perfection. She says good show, guys. So Miss Baker, thank you for the smileys and AC. We know you didn't take over the show, but we definitely thank you for tuning in and listening to the show. But guys, we are going to um, again as we grow we're going to make this a good show that everybody can tune in and be informative, and so again follow our Facebook page. We will provide you with topics that we're going to be talking about, and so again, Chief, it's been a great show, and we will see everybody in the new year, 2022. And again, happy New Year to everybody, and be safe. Don't get out and
Absolutely.
drink and drive.
Yeah, Happy New Year. And remember those bullets that you fire up come down and they could come down and hurt somebody or even worse. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
be
So
safe and enjoy. Happy New Year. We look forward to seeing you all in 2022. Good
all
night,
right,
everybody.
all right. Y'all have a good night, and thank you for joining us.